I recently faced my own worst nightmare. The HOA president pointed a gun at my 7-year-old daughter on our porch over unpaid fines. And her excuse? She said, "Rules are rules." Little did she know, I'd turn her stunt into evidence and make prison her new home. The world shrank to the size of my front porch. The air was heavy with the sharp scent of cut grass, blooming azaleas, and cold gun oil. It's strange what your senses remember in moments like that. The faint chirp of a sprinkler, the squeak of porch boards under my bare feet, my heartbeat slamming in my ears like a drum line. Across from me, not 10 feet away, stood Karen Hubert, the self-appointed queen of our HOA, ruler of this perfect little suburban kingdom we called Hollow Ridge Estates. She was shaking, but the gun in her hand was steady enough. Its silver barrel glinted in the porch light, aimed squarely at my daughter's chest. I moved without thinking. My body turned sideways, belating myself between Karen and Gina. My left hand stretched behind me, feeling the small trembling fingers clutching my jeans. My right hand rose, palm open, voice low. "Karen, put it down," I said, trying to sound calm while every cell in my body screamed. Gina was still clutching her favorite pink crayon, the one she used to draw unicorns and rainbows on the back porch. She held it like it could make this nightmare disappear. Her lower lip quivered. "Daddy?" she whispered, so softly it nearly broke me. Flashing red and blue lights painted the street. 2 police cruisers had skidded to a stop at the end of the driveway, doors open, officers crouched behind them with their weapons drawn. "Drop the gun, ma'am," one shouted through a megaphone. "Do it now." But Karen didn't move. She didn't even blink. The only motion was the twitch in her right hand, that awful glint of metal, and the trembling of her lips as she spat words that made no sense. "He owes me. He owes the association. You think you're better than the rules, George?" Her voice cracked with fury and something worse. Desperation. The world went silent for a second, like everything had been vacuumed out of existence. I could hear the rasp of my own breath. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it would burst through my ribs. My brain raced distance, angle, cover, speed. Could I close the space before she fired? No, not without risking Gina. I had to keep her talking. I had to buy time. "Karen," I said softly, inching forward just enough to draw her focus. "We can work this out. Whatever the fine is, I'll pay it. Just put the gun down. Please." Her eyes darted wildly, bright and glassy. "You think this is about money?" she snapped. "You humiliated me. You went behind my back, questioned my authority. You think you can make a fool out of me in front of everyone." The absurdity of it hit me. She wasn't here over a $50 fine. She was here because she'd lost control of the one thing she craved most: power. Behind me, I felt Gina's tiny fingers clutch tighter. She whimpered, a small, frightened sound that sliced through the chaos. I wanted to turn, to tell her it was okay, but I couldn't. I had to stay locked on Karen's eyes. One wrong move, one loud sound, and she might pull the trigger. "Ma'am!" another officer barked. "Put the weapon on the ground. Do it now." Karen flinched, her gaze flicking toward the flashing lights. For a heartbeat, I thought she might obey. Instead, her grip tightened. Her knuckles went white. The smell of ozone and engine oil filled my lungs. Somewhere behind me, I could hear my wife, Tara, yelling into the phone. Steady, calm, giving our address, describing everything. That was Tara, unshakable even in chaos. If I was fire, she was stone. Then it happened. Gina's crayon slipped from her hand and rolled across the porch boards, the tiny clatter echoing like a gunshot in the night. Karen twitched, her finger brushing the trigger. "Don't!" I roared, instinct taking over. My arms shot out, my body shifting further in front of Gina. The officers shouted again, louder this time, their guns trained on Karen. "Karen, listen to me," I said, forcing the words out between clenched teeth. "This isn't you. You don't want to hurt a child. You don't want to do this." Her face twisted, not in understanding, but in rage. Her carefully styled blonde hair was falling out of its bun. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks. She looked less like a president and more like someone unraveling right before my eyes. "You don't get it," she hissed. "You think you can defy me? I make the rules here. I decide who stays and who goes." Her words sounded like something torn straight from a nightmare. And maybe that's what this was, the nightmare version of suburbia, where the HOA president traded newsletters for a revolver. The flashing lights grew brighter, closer. The officers were advancing slowly, forming a semicircle around my yard. I saw one signal, the other nonverbal commands, tactical steps. They were preparing for the takedown. I knew the instant before it happened. The air shifted. A hush, a pause, then a voice like thunder. "Now!" Two officers broke from cover, charging forward. Karen jerked, startled, swinging the gun toward them. I lunged, grabbing Gina and dropping to the ground. The sound of metal hitting concrete followed, the gun clattering away. Then shouting, movement, a tangle of arms and uniforms. When I looked up, Karen was on her knees, her wrists in cuffs. Mascara streaked down her face. The gun lay several feet away, harmless now under a pool of flashing red light. I pulled Gina into my arms. She buried her face in my chest, sobbing quietly. I could feel her heartbeat against mine. Wild, terrified, alive. I held her tighter than I ever had before. The officers moved fast, securing the weapon, reading Karen her rights. One of them, a kind-faced woman with a steady voice, knelt beside us. "She's okay," she said softly, checking Gina over. "You both are." But as I sat there, holding my daughter under the wash of red and blue, I knew this wasn't over. The gun was just the climax of something much bigger, a storm that had been brewing for months. Tara came running out, tears streaking her cheeks, her phone still in her hand. She knelt beside me, wrapping her arms around both of us. For a long moment, the three of us just stayed there, shaking, breathing, existing. When I finally looked up, Karen was being led to the patrol car, still shouting, her voice hoarse and cracked. "You'll regret this, George. You'll all regret this. Maybe I would have once, but not tonight." Tonight, something inside me had changed. I watched as the car door slammed shut, the siren fading into the night. Then I turned to Tara, my voice barely more than a whisper. "This didn't start tonight," I said. "This started the day we moved here." She nodded, eyes glistening. "Then start from the beginning," she said quietly. And that's exactly what I did. Because the only way to understand how a neighborhood queen turned into a criminal is to rewind the story to where it all began. Before all the flashing lights and sirens, before our porch became a crime scene, life was simple, almost too perfect. We had just moved into Hollow Ridge Estates, a tidy little pocket of suburbia where every mailbox matched. Every lawn was trimmed like a golf course, and everyone waved as if rehearsed. Felt safe, organized, ideal. Tara called it our fresh start. I called it quiet. Both of us were wrong. We bought the house in spring. The air smelled like rain and new beginnings. Our daughter, Gina, ran barefoot through the living room the first day, spinning in circles, her laughter bouncing off the empty walls. I remember thinking that sound, that laughter, was what home should feel like. I had no idea how soon it would be replaced by fear. Our first official encounter with the HOA came the same week we unpacked. It was a welcome to the neighborhood barbecue hosted by the HOA board. Tables lined with potato salad and plastic cups of lemonade. Name tags for everyone. It was supposed to be friendly, but there was an undercurrent to the smiles. Something tight, something performative. That's when I met her, Karen Hubert, HOA president. A woman whose handshake could crack bone and whose smile never reached her eyes. Her blonde hair was pinned back so tight it looked like it hurt. Her voice had the tone of someone used to being obeyed. Smooth on the surface, sharp underneath. "Well, if it isn't our new family," she said, scanning us from head to toe like she was inspecting an exhibit. "I'm so glad you moved in. We value order here in Hollow Ridge." Order. The word hung between us like a threat dressed up as a compliment. I smiled politely. "We're looking forward to being part of the community." Her eyes flicked to our car parked along the curb. "That's yours?" she asked, already frowning. Yeah, I said. Just until we clear the garage. She nodded slowly. We prefer residents to use their garages after 11 p.m. It keeps the streets tidy. Then she laughed lightly, the kind of laugh that didn't reach her soul. Just a friendly reminder. At the time, I thought she was just one of those overly enthusiastic HOA types, the kind who color-code their recycling bins and alphabetize their neighbors' problems. I couldn't have guessed she'd one day weaponize those reminders. Tara, ever the diplomat, tried to make small talk. It's such a beautiful neighborhood, she said. Feels peaceful. Oh, it is, Karen replied quickly. Because we keep it that way. Then she moved on to scold another homeowner whose grass was half an inch too long. That night, Tara chuckled as we unpacked boxes. She's intense, huh? Intense, I said. And the kind of person who measures her power in rulebooks. I should have paid more attention to that first impression. Sometimes the warning signs come in small talk and fake smiles. For a few weeks, things were good. I was busy with work. Tara was freelancing from home. Gina was making friends, drawing chalk rainbows on the driveway every afternoon. I'd sit on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching her color the concrete. Life was quiet, easy, predictable. Then, one Friday morning, everything changed. Not with a bang, but with a piece of paper. It was tucked under my windshield wiper like a parking ticket. White envelope, official HOA seal. I remember smiling when I saw it. Probably a newsletter, I thought. Maybe something about upcoming events or a pool opening. But when I tore it open, my smile died halfway through the first line. Notice of violation. It said my car, the same one I had parked in my own driveway, was in violation of aesthetic standards. The fine, $50. I stared at the letter, then at my car. A 10-year-old silver sedan, clean, polished, not leaking oil, not dented, not junked, just parked. Apparently, overnight parking in driveways after 11 p.m. was against community uniformity guidelines. I blinked. Curfew for cars? I muttered. Tara was in the kitchen helping Gina with homework when I walked in. I tossed the letter on the counter. You're not going to believe this. She read it carefully, her expression unreadable. Aesthetic standards, she said finally. What does that even mean? Gina looked up from her coloring book. Is your car ugly, Daddy? I smiled and knelt beside her. No, sweetie. My car's very handsome. The lady just doesn't think so. Tara shook her head. Let's just pay it. We don't need trouble. And for a while, that was our strategy. Keep the peace, avoid confrontation, blend in. But it wasn't peace we were buying. It was permission to exist on her terms. Still, I paid the fine. $50 wasn't worth a fight. 2 days later, another envelope appeared, taped right to our front door. Another fine, this time for $100. The reason? The basketball hoop at the end of our driveway. It wasn't even permanent, just one of those adjustable, portable ones. Gina's favorite thing in the world. She'd shoot hoops in the evenings, her laughter echoing down the block. The letter said, unapproved structure visible from the street. I looked around. The Miller family 2 doors down had the exact same hoop. The Petersons across the street had a massive wooden playset shaped like a pirate ship. No fines for them. Just us. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd. Maybe it's a mistake, Tara said. Maybe it's personal, I said. I started watching. Every night, I'd walk around the neighborhood, a notepad in hand, pretending to take a stroll. I counted violations, basketball hoops, cars, visible trash cans, paint colors slightly off-code. Dozens of them. But the fines? Only landed on one doorstep. Ours. That's when I realized we weren't being corrected. We were being targeted. It didn't make sense then. Not yet. But I could feel something beneath the surface. Like there was more to these petty rules than just pettiness. Like someone was using them for control. Still, I kept telling myself it was nothing. A misunderstanding. It had to be. Because who could possibly be so obsessed with power that they'd start a war over a basketball hoop? I didn't know it yet, but that question, that single doubt, was the first domino. And once it fell, Nothing in Hollow Ridge would ever be the same again. It started small. A letter here, a warning there. But before long, our mailbox became a weekly delivery service for Karen's brand of tyranny. Every envelope looked the same. Crisp white paper, the HOA logo stamped in the corner like a threat in ink. The moment I saw one, my stomach tightened. It wasn't the money. It was the principle, the tone. Each letter dripped with condescension, written like a disappointed teacher scolding a child. The next fine came 3 days later, $75 for inconsistent lawn maintenance. I'd mowed the grass that weekend, but apparently, I'd missed an uneven section near the mailbox. I stared at the photo attached, a zoomed-in shot of a single patch of grass barely higher than the rest. Tara frowned. Someone had to come right up to our yard to take that. Yeah, I said quietly. Someone with a camera and too much time. The someone, of course, was Karen. She didn't just enforce the rules. She hunted for violations like a bounty collector. The way she strutted through the neighborhood, clipboard in hand, snapping photos like she was conducting a federal investigation, it was unsettling. Neighbors noticed too. People started keeping their blinds closed, their smiles shorter. Hollow Ridge wasn't a community anymore. It was a kingdom, and Karen was the self-appointed monarch. The worst part? Everyone obeyed her. Fear can be disguised as politeness. By mid-month, we'd racked up 4 separate fines: driveway parking, the basketball hoop, unauthorized front yard lighting, and the latest, a violation for improper garbage bin visibility. I stared at the photo she attached, our bins neatly lined up by the curb on trash day. That's when I snapped. This is insane, I muttered, pacing the kitchen. We pay dues for this? So she can stalk us with a camera? Tara sighed, rubbing her temples. She's singling us out. Why? She shrugged. Maybe we're new. Maybe she thinks we won't fight back. That night, while Tara put Gina to bed, I sat at my computer and started typing. Polite email, too polite maybe. I asked for clarification about the fines. I used phrases like seeking understanding and desiring compliance. I even thanked her for keeping the neighborhood beautiful. I never got a reply. Instead, a week later, a certified letter arrived. Notice of late fees. Apparently, failure to pay the fines within 7 days added an additional $25 per violation, plus administrative processing costs. Tara stared at the letter, her jaw tightening. She's baiting you. She's robbing us, I said flatly. The next HOA board meeting was scheduled that Thursday. I went. The community clubhouse was spotless. Fluorescent lights, coffee urns, a faint smell of lemon disinfectant. About 20 homeowners sat in folding chairs, whispering among themselves. At the front, Karen presided like a queen behind a plastic nameplate. Karen Hubert, President. The meeting started with mundane chatter, landscaping budgets, pool maintenance, tree trimming schedules. I waited. I listened. And when Karen finally said, "Any new business?" I stood up. "Yeah," I said. "My fines." The room went quiet. Karen smiled, that tight, brittle smile that never reached her eyes. "Ah, Mr. Carmen. Always a pleasure." I held up one of the letters. "I've received 5 separate violation notices in 2 weeks. Meanwhile, my neighbors have similar situations and 0 fines. I'd just like to understand why." Karen tapped her pen against the table. "Because you're breaking the rules. The same rules everyone else is breaking." Her eyes hardened. "Mr. Carmen, are you suggesting selective enforcement?" "I'm suggesting harassment," I said. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Karen's smile didn't falter, but her tone sharpened. "The HOA exists to preserve harmony, Mr. Carmen. If you find that difficult to comply with, perhaps Hollow Ridge isn't the right fit for your family." That did it. My hands clenched. "We're not leaving our home because you have a power complex." Tara's voice in my head whispered, "Stay calm." Karen gave a sharp rap of her gavel. "This discussion is closed." "Closed?" I asked. "You didn't even answer the question." Her eyes flicked toward the other board members. 2 men and a woman who looked like they'd rather vanish into their seats. None of them spoke. She ruled through intimidation, and they obeyed. "Meeting adjourned," she said briskly. I left the clubhouse shaking, not from fear, but fury. That night, Tara was waiting for me on the porch. "How bad was it?" "She's not even pretending anymore," I said. "She's untouchable." Tara took a deep breath. "Then we make her touchable." She opened her laptop, her fingers already flying across the keys. Tara used to be a paralegal. Organization, research, documentation, those were her weapons. "If she's breaking her own rules," she said, "we'll find it." The next few nights turned our dining room into a war room. Papers spread across the table. A whiteboard full of dates and fines. We printed every letter, every rulebook clause. Tara highlighted inconsistencies in yellow, contradictions in blue. Meanwhile, I started collecting evidence from the neighborhood. I walked the streets at dusk, pretending to take evening strolls, snapping discreet photos with my phone. Driveways with cars, lawns with bins visible, basketball hoops, lawn gnomes, porch flags. I cataloged everything. By the end of the week, I had over 30 violations, none of which belonged to us. But only one family had been fined. That was the moment the truth started to form. Faint but undeniable. This wasn't about community. It wasn't about beautification or standards. This was targeting. Personal, deliberate, and systematic. Tara leaned back in her chair, scanning the spreadsheet she'd built. "Look at the pattern," she said. "The fines started right after that first HOA meeting." After I questioned her authority, I said quietly. She nodded. "Exactly." The realization hit like a punch. This wasn't coincidence. This was retaliation. From that moment on, something in me shifted. Fear turned into resolve. If Karen wanted a fight, she was going to get one. But I'd fight her with the one thing she didn't expect. Proof. Tara smiled faintly as she closed her laptop. "You know," she said, "I used to think these HOAs were just harmless busybodies." "Yeah," I said, staring at the pile of letters on the table. "Turns out, ours runs like a small dictatorship." She laughed softly. "Then it's time to start a revolution." Outside, the sprinklers hissed to life, casting arcs of water across the lawns. A picture-perfect scene of suburbia. The kind of place where no one would ever imagine neighbors going to war over rules and roses. But behind every perfect neighborhood is a secret. And behind every smile, someone's keeping score. I looked out into the dark street, at the glow of Karen's porch light across the cul-de-sac. For the first time, I noticed the camera mounted under her eaves, pointed toward our house. "She's watching us," I said quietly. Tara didn't look surprised. "Then we'll watch back." That was the night it stopped being about fines. It became about power, and who would still have it when the truth came out. The night we decided to fight back, something changed in our house. It wasn't just anger anymore, it was focus. The kind that comes when you stop reacting and start hunting for answers. Tara and I turned the dining table into a war zone of paperwork. HOA bylaws, bank statements, and board meeting minutes. Everything we could get our hands on. Tara worked the numbers while I played detective on the ground. "Everything in these letters," she said one night, tapping a fine notice with her pen, "is tied to an account called Hollow Ridge Management Services. But when I searched for that company, nothing came up. No registration, no state license. It doesn't exist." I leaned back in my chair. "So where's the money going?" She looked up slowly, eyes narrowing. "That's what I'm going to find out." For the next few days, she disappeared into her laptop like a hacker in a movie. Multiple tabs open, lines of text scrolling, cross-checking county databases and business filings. Tara had a sharp mind. Calm, analytical, dangerous when underestimated. Meanwhile, I started asking quiet questions around the neighborhood. Some people didn't want to talk. They were scared. Others whispered stories over backyard fences. Stories about fines that vanished after friendly payments. About Karen recommending certain contractors who always charged extra. One neighbor, Mr. Wilkins, a retired accountant, told me he once tried to request the HOA's financial records. Karen had told him they were confidential. He dropped it. That word stuck in my mind, confidential. HOA funds weren't supposed to be confidential. They belonged to the homeowners. When I told Tara, her lips curved into the faintest smile. Then she's hiding something. 3 nights later, Tara called me over to her screen. You're not going to believe this. She traced the management company's address. It led to a small P.O. box registered to a woman named Denise Hubert. Her cousin, I said immediately. Tara nodded. Yup, and guess what? Denise's name shows up on 2 of the HOA's vendor payments. Landscaping services and maintenance. I blinked. Karen's paying her cousin with HOA money? Looks that way. My pulse quickened. This wasn't just abuse of power, this was fraud. But accusations without proof were dangerous. Karen had power, connections, and an entire community afraid to cross her. We needed hard evidence, something no one could dispute. So we came up with a plan. Tara would keep digging digitally. I'd gather what I could physically. One Saturday morning, while most of the neighborhood was at the park, I walked past the HOA office, a small converted unit near the clubhouse. The blinds were drawn, but the door had one of those frosted windows. Through the blur, I saw movement, Karen's silhouette, pacing. A moment later, the door cracked open and Arthur, one of the board members, stepped out. Arthur was different, quiet, older, polite. The kind of man who said good morning, even when you ignored him. His eyes met mine briefly, and something flickered there, guilt. I waited until he was a few houses down before approaching. Arthur, I called out. He froze, turning slowly. George, evening. I just wanted to ask you something. About the HOA. He hesitated. I can't discuss internal matters. I smiled faintly. Then let's talk about moral ones. He looked at me, studying my face. For a moment, he didn't answer. Then he sighed. Walk with me. We strolled down the sidewalk, the sunset casting long shadows across the manicured lawns. She's gone too far, Arthur said quietly. I joined the board to help the community, not this. What is this, Arthur? He rubbed his temples. Karen handles all the finances herself. We've asked to review them, but she says the management company oversees it. Except no one's ever met them. The checks go to her. Always her. Then why stay on the board? I asked. He looked away. Because if we leave, there's no one left to stop her at all. He didn't give me documents, didn't hand over proof. Not yet. But his words were enough to confirm everything Tara had suspected. That night, I came home buzzing with adrenaline. Tara listened, nodding slowly. So we have an insider. That's something. I grinned. He's scared. But scared people talk. We just need to give him a reason. Over the next week, Tara quietly reached out to a few other residents who'd complained privately. She organized them into a small group chat, the Hollow Ridge Survivors Club, she called it, half joking. We shared stories, screenshots, photos. Every new piece added to the puzzle. Then came the break we needed. Tara found an email buried in the HOA's online archives. A monthly expense report that had been accidentally uploaded before being deleted. She'd saved a copy. It listed maintenance reimbursements paid to Hollow Ridge Management Services, thousands of dollars per month, but the invoices were vague, with no receipts or approval signatures. Look at this one, Tara said, pointing to a line item. Security camera upgrades. $4,800. No record of who installed them. I frowned. We don't even have new cameras. Exactly. She clicked another tab. And this one, community landscaping, $6,200. Paid to Denise Hubert. But the landscapers were out here last week, and they said they haven't been paid in months. The realization hit like thunder. She's double billing, pretending to pay vendors, pocketing the money through her cousin. Tara nodded grimly. If we expose this, she's finished. But exposure required timing, and evidence solid enough to withstand her inevitable smear campaign. We decided to build a full case before confronting her. Every night, Tara organized the data into folders labeled invoices, emails, witness statements. She was methodical, almost surgical. I started documenting her every interaction. The way she shouted at neighbors, the late-night deliveries to her house, even the time she replaced the community lockbox for security reasons. I knew then she was hiding something in that lockbox. So one evening, under the pretense of walking the dog, I went to check it. The box was bolted beside the clubhouse door. I shone my flashlight and noticed faint scrape marks, like it had been opened recently with a screwdriver. That same week, Arthur called. His voice was low, nervous. "We need to talk. Off the record." We met at the diner on Oak Street. He looked exhausted. "She made us sign blank approval sheets," he said quietly. "Said she'd fill in the details later." My stomach dropped. "That's forgery." He nodded. "And if anyone questions her, she threatens to fine them or revoke their privileges." I sat back, exhaling slowly. "Arthur, would you be willing to help us prove it?" He didn't answer right away. Then he looked up and said four words that changed everything. "She's going to slip." And she did. The very next weekend, Karen held her monthly HOA inspection walk. She strutted past every house, clipboard in hand, until she reached ours. Tara had left the porch camera rolling all day. The footage captured her snapping photos, pulling a small notepad, then, unbelievably, dropping a folded check from her pocket. The check fluttered into our flower bed. It was made out to Denise Hubert, signed by Karen. Memo line, "Reimbursement, Community Fund." That was the crack in the armor we needed. When I showed it to Tara, she smiled for the first time in weeks. "That's not just evidence," she said. "That's the motive." The pieces were all there now, the ghost company, the forged approvals, the hush money. But to bring her down, we needed one final thing. Her own voice admitting it. And that would come from the one man she never suspected was about to betray her. Arthur. The thing about power is it doesn't slip quietly. When people like Karen start to lose control, they don't surrender. They double down. And that's exactly what she did. It began subtly. Little reminders that she still owned this neighborhood, or at least wanted us to think she did. First came the letters again. But this time they weren't printed. They were handwritten. The first one arrived on a Friday, folded neatly inside our mailbox with no envelope. "You're not welcome here. Leave before things get ugly." No signature, but the handwriting bold, angry, sharp. I knew it instantly. Karen's. I showed it to Tara. She didn't even flinch. "She's panicking," she said. "That means we're getting close." Still, I couldn't shake the unease that crawled under my skin. It's one thing to fight someone on paper. It's another when they cross into your personal space. That night, I installed security cameras, one at the porch, one over the garage, and one facing the street. If Karen wanted to play games, I'd record every move she made. But she wasn't done. 2 nights later, I woke up to the sound of tires screeching. I bolted upright and ran to the window. A black SUV idled at the edge of our driveway, lights off. The moment I stepped outside, it peeled away. No plates visible. Tara followed me out, robe pulled tight. "What is it?" I stared down the empty street, pulse hammering. "She's watching us. Or sending someone who is." The next morning, we checked the footage. The cameras had caught the SUV, dark windows untraceable. But what caught my eye wasn't the vehicle. It was what happened before it arrived. Karen herself had walked past our house not 10 minutes earlier. Clipboard in hand, pretending to take notes in the dark. She looked right at the camera. Right at me. That's when I realized she knew we were digging. And she wasn't bluffing anymore. A few days later, Arthur called. His voice was trembling. "She knows I talked to you," he whispered. My chest tightened. "How?" "She found the message thread. I don't know how. She said if I don't stay quiet, she'll ruin me. Take my house." "She can't do that," I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew they were hollow. Karen had a way of bending rules until they fit her will. Arthur hung up before I could say more. That night, Tara and I sat at the dining table, surrounded by files and evidence, the glow of her laptop reflecting off her tired eyes. "She's getting desperate," Tara said. "That means she's close to slipping." "Yeah," I said quietly, staring at the dark window. But desperate people are dangerous. I wasn't wrong. The next morning, we woke up to find our mailbox smashed. Bent metal, shattered glass from the nearby porch light, a single note taped to the remains. Last warning. Gina saw it before I could grab it. "Daddy, what's that?" she asked, clutching her stuffed rabbit. I forced a smile I didn't feel. "Just a prank, honey. Go inside." But as she turned away, my hands clenched around the paper until it crumpled. That afternoon, I went to the police. The officer listened politely, took notes, but his tone was cautious. "You don't have direct proof she wrote those letters, sir. Without it, there's not much we can do." I wanted to scream. Instead, I handed him the first note and the camera footage. "Then start here," I said. He promised to look into it. I could tell he didn't believe me. Karen's smile at the next HOA meeting confirmed it. She knew the system worked for her. She sat there, calm as ever, talking about community unity, while her eyes darted toward me, cold and mocking. "Some residents," she said, voice dripping with fake sweetness, "seem to think we're not doing enough to keep Hollow Ridge safe, but rest assured we're watching everything." The room chuckled politely. I felt my blood run cold. That night, I noticed something strange. Our front porch light flickered, even though the bulb was new. When I checked the circuit, I found the wiring had been tampered with. Someone had pried open the side panel. "Karen wouldn't," Tara began. "She would," I interrupted. "And she already has." I added motion sensors, reinforced the door locks, and put a camera in Gina's room facing the window. It made me sick that I even had to. For a while, things went quiet. No letters, no visits, just a thick, uneasy calm that sat over the neighborhood like fog. Then came the night I'll never forget. Tara was working late, and Gina was drawing at the kitchen table. I stepped outside to grab something from the garage, just a few feet away, when the lights suddenly cut out. Total darkness. "Daddy!" Gina's small voice floated from the kitchen. "I'm right here, sweetheart," I called, reaching for the flashlight on my workbench. That's when I heard it, the faint crunch of footsteps outside. Slow, careful, deliberate. I froze. Through the garage window, I saw a shadow move past the fence. Then another. I whispered, "Tara, call 911, before realizing she wasn't home. My phone was in the kitchen. A low creak echoed from the side door, the one that led to the backyard. I grabbed the nearest thing I could, a crowbar, and stepped toward the door, heart pounding. Then the motion light flicked on. For a split second, I saw her, Karen, standing in my backyard. She wasn't holding a clipboard this time, just staring, hands at her sides, her face twisted into something between anger and satisfaction. "What do you want, Karen?" I shouted, stepping forward. She didn't answer. She just smiled, a slow, chilling smile, and backed into the darkness. By the time the police arrived, she was gone. No footprints, no evidence, nothing. The officers exchanged glances, clearly doubting my story. One of them even said, "Maybe she was just passing by, at midnight, in my yard." I wanted to slam my fists through the wall. The next morning, Tara printed out photos of Karen's visit, captured by the side camera. It was blurry, but unmistakably her. "This is enough," she said. "We can't let her keep controlling the narrative." We called a lawyer. That single phone call was the first real blow we landed. The lawyer, Mr. Dorsey, specialized in HOA fraud. He took one look at our evidence and said, "If this is half as bad as it looks, she's going to prison." But Karen wasn't done fighting. 2 days later, Dorsey's office was broken into, files gone, computers wiped. The only thing left was a note on his desk. "Stay out of Hollow Ridge business." He called me that night. "Whoever you're dealing with," he said, "they're not just power-hungry, they're reckless." That was the moment I realized something crucial. Karen wasn't acting alone anymore. She had help, and the more cornered she felt, the more dangerous she became. I started carrying a small recorder everywhere, voice memos, car conversations, phone calls. Tara backed up every file to a secure drive. We made copies of everything, one set at home, one at my brother's place 2 towns over. Karen could destroy evidence, but she couldn't destroy all of it. Still, every day felt like walking on glass. Gina stopped playing outside. Tara kept the curtains drawn. Every time a car slowed near the house, my heart jumped. Then one night, I found a dead crow on our doorstep. No note this time, just that silent, grim warning. Tara stared at it for a long time before whispering, "She's losing it." I nodded. And when people like her lose control, they go nuclear. We both knew what that meant. Things were going to get worse before they got better. But what we didn't know was that the war was about to turn. Not because of me, not because of Tara, but because of the one person we least expected, Arthur. The man who had been silent, scared, and compliant was about to make the move that would bring Karen's empire crashing down. And when he did, everything changed. Arthur wasn't the kind of man you'd notice twice. Quiet voice, polite nods, always carrying a worn leather notebook instead of a phone. But beneath that mild exterior, there was something brewing, guilt, fear, maybe both. And that guilt would soon become the crack that split Karen's empire wide open. It happened one rainy afternoon. I was at the local grocery store when I saw him by the produce aisle, picking through apples with shaking hands. He looked thinner, paler than before. I hesitated, then approached. "Arthur," I said quietly. He jumped like I'd caught him stealing. "George, please." His eyes darted around. "Not here." "Then where?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "Meet me behind the old tennis courts. Tonight." That night, the air was thick with humidity and the smell of wet pavement. I waited under the broken floodlight, rain tapping softly against my jacket. A few minutes later, Arthur appeared, clutching that same notebook to his chest like a shield. "I can't keep living like this," he said before I could speak. "She's gone too far." I didn't have to ask who she was. Arthur's eyes darted nervously. "She knows you're building a case. She's been talking to people, telling them you're harassing her. She said she'll make sure you regret ever moving here." I clenched my jaw. "She already made sure of that." He nodded weakly. "She's been paying herself for fake maintenance jobs. I've seen the checks, but she keeps the real ledger hidden in her house. And she records every meeting in case she needs leverage." "Where's the backup?" I asked. "In her office drawer," he said. "She transfers copies to a flash drive she carries on her keychain." Bingo. I could see the torment in his eyes. This man wasn't built for rebellion. He was built for obedience, the kind of person who apologizes when someone else bumps into them. But now he was standing in the rain, whispering treason. "I can't get caught," he said. "If she finds out." "She won't," I said. "Arthur, you're doing the right thing. We can end this." He nodded shakily. "What do you need me to do?" That's when Tara joined the fight. We spent the next 2 nights planning, whispering over blueprints of the HOA office like spies in a movie. Arthur would wear a small recording device, one Tara found online disguised as a pen. His job was simple: get Karen talking, let her brag, capture her words. Arthur was terrified, but fear can make people brave when they have nowhere left to hide. The day of the meeting, he texted one line, "It's happening." We sat by the window, watching from across the street as the board gathered inside the clubhouse. Rain drizzled down again, blurring the windows. Through the haze, I saw Karen pacing, animated, confident, untouchable. When the meeting ended, Arthur didn't text. He didn't call. For hours. My mind spiraled through every worst-case scenario. Then, around midnight, I heard a knock. Arthur stood on my porch, soaked to the bone, his face ghost-white. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the pen. "She talked," he whispered. Tara exhaled sharply. "You got it." He nodded. "Everything." We gathered around the dining table, laptop open, volume low. Tara plugged in the pen and hit play. Karen's voice filled the room. Sharp, smug, self-satisfied. "They think they can expose me? Please. I could find them out of their house if I wanted to. Half the board's signatures are mine anyway. They'll never prove a thing." What about the payments? Someone else asked. Arthur's voice, barely audible. Oh, those? All legal. Family business. The bylaws allow third-party management. If they're too stupid to read the fine print, that's not my fault. A pause. Then Karen laughed. A short, bitter sound. And if George Carmen keeps pushing me, he'll learn how quickly I can make people disappear from this neighborhood. The words hung in the air like poison. Tara froze, hand over her mouth. She said it. She actually said it. Arthur sat trembling. You'll protect me, right? I nodded firmly. We'll protect all of us. It wasn't just evidence now, it was insurance. The kind of proof that didn't just win arguments. It ended Rains. We spent the rest of the night backing up the audio on 3 separate drives. Tara transcribed the whole thing line by line, highlighting every admission, every violation. By dawn, we had a file thicker than a court brief. But Karen wasn't going to go down quietly. The next morning, she sent an HOA-wide email titled Community Safety Concerns. It accused me of creating false allegations and harassing board members. She even attached a photo of me talking to Arthur at the grocery store, taken from a security camera. She turned the neighborhood against me overnight. Neighbors stopped waving. Some whispered. One man I'd mowed lawns with actually crossed the street to avoid me. It hurt, but I knew it was her final move, the desperate spin before collapse. Tara wasn't shaken. Let her talk, she said calmly. We've got her recorded admitting fraud and threats. When we reveal this, she's finished. But we couldn't just drop the recording online or hand it to the police. We needed the timing right. Public, undeniable, explosive. Arthur, bless his soul, offered the perfect idea. Next week is the HOA quarterly meeting, he said. Everyone will be there. Tara looked at me, eyes gleaming. Then that's where we do it. We'd expose her in front of everyone. The same people she'd ruled over for years. No room for denial, no way to twist the narrative. That week, we prepared like prosecutors. I printed documents, Tara organized files, Arthur rehearsed the sequence. The plan was simple. We'd present concerns about financial discrepancies, let her respond, then play the recording in front of the entire neighborhood. If it worked, the illusion of her power would shatter instantly. On the morning of the meeting, I stood in front of the mirror tying my shirt collar, feeling the weight of everything on my shoulders. For months, we'd lived under her shadow, walking on eggshells, watching our backs, protecting our daughter from a war she never asked for. But tonight it would end. Tara placed a hand on my shoulder. You ready? I met her eyes in the reflection. I've never been more ready in my life. As we left the house, the sun dipped below the rooftops, casting the neighborhood in that golden-orange glow that makes everything look calm, peaceful, ordinary. It was almost poetic, the perfect mask for the storm we were about to unleash. Karen had built her kingdom on fear and fake rules. By the time the night was over, that kingdom would burn. The week before the meeting was a study in controlled chaos. We weren't just preparing to speak. We were preparing to dismantle a fabricated empire. Every slide, every copy of an invoice, every highlighted paragraph had to land like a hammer. There would be no theatrics, no melodrama. Only facts, time-stamped evidence, and the voice of the woman who'd been hiding behind bylaws and intimidation for years. Tara became a machine of precision. She formatted spreadsheets into neat, color-coded tables and made a timeline that read like a criminal case file. Date, transaction, recipient, discrepancy, she said, tapping each row with the tip of a pencil like a metronome. She exported everything to PDF, printed extra copies, and labeled them. One set for the board, one set for the homeowners who would likely be on the fence, one set for the DA if it came to that. We were building an army out of paper. I handled logistics. I rented a small portable speaker to play Arthur's recording loud and clear. I checked the clubhouse projector twice, then 3 times. I mapped seating so the room would be oriented toward the screen. I walked the route from my car to the podium, imagining the faces of neighbors as the slides changed. The pie charts, the bank transfers, the image of a check written to Karen's cousin with the memo line, reimbursement. Each slide was a bullet point in a story that had to be told bluntly and cleanly. Arthur called every day, sounding more haggard but resolute. "Are you sure about this?" he asked each time. "Once it's out, there's no going back." I told him the same thing I told myself. It's the truth. If truth is a weapon, we're wielding it right. Word got out, not by me or Tara, but by the rumor mill of a small community. People asked neighbors if they were coming to the meeting. Some were curious. Some were terrified. A few confronted us in polite, hushed tones. "Be careful," one elderly woman warned, clutching her cardigan. "She's powerful." Another neighbor, the Petersons, signed their names on the list to attend and gave us a thumbs up as they walked by. On the morning of the meeting, the clubhouse looked like any other HOA event. Folding chairs in rows, a long table for the board, a coffee urn hissing in the corner. But beneath the ordinary, the air felt electric, like the moment right before lightning strikes. We arrived early. Arthur slipped into a back row, sat hunched with his coat collar up, hiding his hands but not his trembling. Neighbors filed in, some curious, some angry, most tired of fear. The room buzzed with low conversations. Karen arrived last, of course, with the practiced air of someone who always entered on cue. She smiled at familiar people, nodded at certain neighbors, and took her place at the head table as if the room were a stage and she'd written the script. Her cronies, the other board members, sat stiffly beside her, an uneasy entourage. The meeting began with canned pleasantries. Minutes approved, pool repairs discussed, the usual rote items that make up day-to-day HOA life. The gallows humor of my own nervousness made my palms sweat. The clerk called for new business. My chest felt as if it were a drum. I stood up, took a breath, and walked to the podium. I wanted to speak calmly, but my fingers shook as I plugged the USB drive into the laptop. The first slide came up, a simple title page. Hollow Ridge, Financial Transparency and Enforcement Concerns. My voice was steady when I started. I introduced myself, explained we'd come with documented concerns, and asked the room to hear us out. Tara clicked to the next slide, the pie chart. Nearly a third of the HOA budget highlighted in red, labeled Hollow Ridge Management Services, $X, XXX monthly. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The slide that followed showed the corporate filing for the management company, and next to it, a photo of Karen at a family picnic with a man later identified as Denise Hubert's husband. The room grew quieter. I walked them through the timeline. Dates of fines, dates of payments, bank transfers with matching amounts, and a trail that ended at a P.O. box registered under the cousin's name. Each piece fit into the larger mosaic. Misappropriated funds, fabricated invoices, and fines raised under the guise of community uniformity to generate revenue. I held nothing back. Then, as if pulling an axe from a stone, Tara moved to the audio clip. She warned the room gently, "What you're about to hear is an unedited recording of an HOA board meeting. Listen closely." The speaker crackled, then filled the room with Karen's voice. Smug, flippant, candid. "It doesn't matter what they cost us in legal fees," Karen said, unmistakably. "We'll make it back on the liens. It's a revenue stream." You could have heard a pin drop. One of the neighbors put his hand over his mouth. I watched Karen's face change. First a flush, then pale, then a brittle mask. She fumbled for a response that couldn't exist. The video of a handwritten check being dropped into our yard had already been circulated quietly as evidence, but hearing her own admission made the house of cards tremble. I had prepared for denial. I had prepared for excuses. I had not prepared for the thing that happened next. She leaned over to her cronies, forgetting the microphone was live, and hissed a whispered threat. "I'll bury him," she said, low and venomous, not realizing every syllable was being picked up by the same technology she'd once joked about using to maintain order. That whisper was the match. An eruption followed, questions, accusations, cries for answers. Neighbors demanded to know why their dues were disappearing. A woman I'd seen maintain her lawn for 30 years stood, shaking, and said she couldn't afford the suggested improvements Karen had recommended. An elderly man asked where the money for the clubhouse roof had gone. No one had a satisfactory answer. Karen attempted to regain control, but the room no longer belonged to her. Her authority had been premised on secrecy and intimidation. Once those pillars crumbled, the facade collapsed quickly. People who'd been too scared to speak up before now told stories of fines, threats, and punitive measures. Arthur, sitting in the back, raised his hand, his voice thin but steady. "I have documentation that corroborates what you're hearing." By the time the meeting ended, the board was under siege. Someone in attendance had already started a petition for an emergency audit. Others wanted immediate criminal referrals. Karen's smirk had been replaced by frantic attempts at damage control. Text messages, whispered phone calls, the kind of scrambling that reveals guilt better than any accusation ever could. We left that night dizzy with adrenaline and a kind of exhausted vindication. The neighborhood was alive with talk. For the first time in months, people were not walking on eggshells. They were walking toward something, accountability. But the fight wasn't over. Karen had attacked in more ways than one, and threats were not simply words she let slip in private. The danger we'd felt creeping at our doorsteps was real. She had friends in the wrong places and an appetite for retaliation. We knew we'd hit a decisive blow, but we also knew a cornered queen could become the most dangerous thing in a small town. Still, as we walked back to our car under the streetlight glow, neighbors came up to me and Tara with tearful thanks and hands outstretched. One man gripped my shoulder and said, "You did this. You saved us." I could feel the weight of that, heavy and strange. On the drive home, Tara reached over and squeezed my hand. "We did what we had to," she whispered, "but we need to stay vigilant. She'll push back." I nodded. In the rearview mirror that night, Karen's house sat dark, the porch light off for the first time in months. The spectacle of a single person wielding so much power over so many had finally been pierced. There was a certain quiet in that moment. Not the timid silence that fear creates, but the one that follows a storm's passing, charged with the promise of something new. We had exposed her, yes, but now we had to survive what came next. The rules had changed in Hollow Ridge, and there was no turning back. The next HOA meeting wasn't supposed to happen so soon. But once word of Karen's financial scandal hit the neighborhood group chat, there was no containing it. People demanded answers. The board called an emergency meeting, though everyone knew what it really was, a reckoning. I remember standing outside the clubhouse that evening, my heart hammering like a bass drum. The air was heavy, the sky bruised purple from an approaching storm. Neighbors filed in, some whispering, some glaring, all of them hungry for truth. The once quiet community now buzzed like a hornet's nest, and at the center of it was the woman who'd ruled it all, and the family who'd finally stood up to her. Tara squeezed my hand. "No matter what she says, we stay calm," she whispered. I nodded, even though calm was the last thing I felt. Inside, the room was packed wall to wall. Folding chairs filled, people standing in doorways, even a few news reporters who'd caught wind of a suburban HOA fraud scandal. The air conditioning struggled against the heat of too many bodies and too much tension. At the front sat Karen, immaculate as ever, white blazer, pearl earrings, hair pulled so tight it could cut glass. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were hard, hollow. The board members beside her looked anywhere but in her direction. When I walked to the podium, I could feel every eye in the room tracking me. Karen leaned toward her microphone. "Mr. Carmen," she said smoothly, "I trust you're here to issue a public apology for the slander you've been spreading?" Her voice was silk wrapped around a dagger. I smiled faintly. "Actually, I'm here to give you the floor one last time to explain these." Tara clicked the projector remote. The first slide appeared. Bank statements, transaction dates, and check images blown up to full screen. The room fell into stunned silence. Karen didn't blink. "Fabrications," she said crisply. "Photoshopped. None of this is admissible. You've trespassed, stolen documents." I cut her off. "The check you dropped in my yard, was that photoshopped too?" That got the crowd's attention. Gasps rippled through the audience. She froze, lips parting but no words coming. Tara advanced the slides. Here's a copy of the check, signed by you, payable to your cousin, Denise Hubert. And here's the recording from the HOA meeting. Your own words describing how you'd make back legal fees on liens. Karen's jaw clenched. Taken out of context. I stepped closer to the microphone. Then here's the context. Tara hit play. Karen's voice echoed through the speakers. Confident, mocking, dripping with arrogance. Half the board's signatures are mine anyway. They'll never prove a thing. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. No breathing, no murmurs. Just that sentence, hanging like a gunshot in the air. Arthur, sitting near the front row, looked down at his lap, guilt and relief fighting across his face. Someone in the back yelled, "Is that you, Karen?" She snapped. "This is slander. You're all fools if you believe this man." But her voice cracked on the last word, and everyone heard it. The room turned electric. People started shouting, some demanding she resign, others asking where their money had gone. One man stood up waving a pile of HOA fines. "You bled us dry for years, and now you want to talk about rules?" Karen slammed her gavel on the table, her composure fracturing. "Sit down," she barked. "This meeting is over." "No," someone shouted. "This dictatorship is over." Applause broke out, raw, uncoordinated, but real. Karen's eyes darted between faces. Her power, her control, evaporating one expression at a time. "You have no authority to call this meeting to order," she snapped. Tara stepped forward. "Actually, under Section 3 of the HOA bylaws, if 25% of residents demand a meeting, the board must comply. We have over 60%. So yes, Karen, this is official." The crowd erupted. Cheers, claps, the sound of neighbors, the same ones who'd once been afraid to open their blinds, now shouting for accountability. Karen's hand trembled as she grabbed the microphone. "You think you've won? You think you can destroy me with lies?" I took a step closer, voice steady. "You destroyed yourself when you pointed a gun at a child." The room went dead silent again. Her eyes went wide. For a split second, real fear flickered there. She hadn't expected me to say it out loud. "Not here. Not now." Gasps rippled across the room like a wave. Arthur rose slowly. "I was there that night," he said softly. "He's telling the truth." Every eye turned back to Karen. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The composure, the arrogance, it all drained away. She looked smaller suddenly, cornered. Then, in a moment that felt surreal, she snapped. "Fine!" she screamed, slamming her palms on the table. "You want truth? You all deserve what you get. You're parasites. Lazy, entitled parasites who can't follow simple rules." Her voice cracked, hysteria creeping in. "You think this neighborhood runs itself? You think I wanted to do this? I kept this place perfect while you people did nothing." The audience stared, frozen between shock and disbelief. She pointed directly at me. "And you ruined everything. I gave you warnings, I gave you chances. You could have just paid and kept quiet." Her hand shook so violently the microphone rattled. "Karen," I said quietly, "it's over." But she wasn't listening. She was unraveling publicly, completely. In one violent motion, she shoved the microphone aside and stormed off the stage. Two neighbors tried to stop her, but she pushed past them, her heels snapping as she stumbled toward the exit. Tara grabbed my arm. "Let her go," she whispered. "We've done enough." But I wasn't sure we had, because the look she gave me as she turned back, that cold, hollow glare, told me this wasn't over. Not yet. The board immediately voted her suspension. Arthur, trembling but resolute, seconded the motion. A cheer rippled through the room. For the first time, the residents of Hollow Ridge were free from fines, from fear, from the tyranny of a single woman's ego. Outside, the storm had finally broken. Rain hammered the asphalt. Thunder rolled across the sky. As Tara and I stepped out into the downpour, neighbors came up one by one, shaking hands, hugging, thanking. Someone shouted, "You did it!" I smiled, but deep down, I felt a knot in my stomach, because I knew Karen. She wasn't the kind of person to fade quietly into defeat. That night, as lightning flashed over the rooftops and wind howled down the cul-de-sac, I couldn't sleep. I watched the street from the living room window, rain dripping down the glass. At 2:37 a.m., I saw her, Karen's car, creeping slowly past our house. Headlights off. She stopped for just a second, long enough for me to see her silhouette, motionless behind the wheel. Then she drove away into the dark. I whispered to myself, "It's over." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't. This wasn't the kind of story that ends with applause and rain. This was the kind that ends with consequences. And those consequences would come the very next night, when Karen decided to take back what she thought she'd lost. Not with rules or letters or threats, but with a gun. The storm that night felt wrong. Too quiet between the thunderclaps, too heavy with something waiting to happen. The kind of night that hums beneath your skin, whispering that danger isn't coming. It's already here. We'd just finished dinner. Tara was cleaning up in the kitchen, humming softly to drown out the rain tapping the windows. Gina sat cross-legged on the living room rug, coloring a picture of our house with bright yellow windows and a rainbow overhead. Peaceful, almost perfect, except for the weight in my chest that wouldn't let me breathe right. I hadn't told Tara what I'd seen the night before, Karen's car creeping past our home. I didn't want to worry her, but every flicker of lightning made me glance at the window. Every rumble of thunder sounded too close. Then came the knock. 3 short raps. Firm. Deliberate. Tara looked up. Who knocks during a storm? Before I could answer, it came again. Knock. 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 I stepped toward the door. Stay back, I said quietly. George? Tara's voice was low, uncertain. I peered through the peephole, and my blood went cold. Karen. Standing there in the downpour, drenched to the bone, mascara streaking her face like war paint. Her hair clung to her cheeks, and her eyes looked unhinged. Wild. She was holding something under her coat. I didn't need to guess what. I turned, voice low and urgent. Tara, take Gina upstairs. Now. She didn't argue. She grabbed our daughter's hand, but Gina resisted, frowning. Daddy, go with Mommy, sweetheart, I said, forcing a smile that hurt to make. I'll be right behind you. Another knock, harder this time. Then her voice, muffled through the rain and wood. You think you can ruin me and just go on with your perfect little life? My hands were shaking. I grabbed the phone, dialing 911 with one hand while keeping my eyes on the door. 911, what's your emergency? Before I could speak, there was a sound that froze me. A metallic click, a gun being cocked. Open the door, George, she shouted, voice rising into madness. Let's finish this. Ma'am, I said into the phone, keeping my voice calm for the operator. This is 458 Hollow Ridge Drive. HOA president is outside my door with a gun. Stay on the line, the operator said. Officers are en route. Do not engage. But Karen didn't give me the choice. She started pounding on the door. Each hit louder, faster, angrier. You took everything from me, she screamed. My reputation, my home, my friends. Lightning flashed. For a split second, I saw the outline of the gun in her hand. Tara's voice came from the stairs, trembling. George, she's going to break the door. Stay upstairs, I barked. The door frame rattled, wood cracked, and then silence. No more pounding, just the rain soft again. I edged toward the door, holding my breath. Then came the sound of the latch turning. My stomach dropped. I'd forgotten to throw the deadbolt. The door burst open. Karen stood there, soaked and shaking, gun raised. Karen, don't. I started, but the word died in my throat. Her eyes weren't human anymore. They were pure chaos. Rage and fear and desperation tangled into something feral. You destroyed me, she hissed. You think you're a hero? You're just another coward hiding behind the law. I raised my hands slowly. Karen, listen to me. Shut up. Her finger twitched on the trigger. And then a small voice behind me. Daddy! Gina had come back down the stairs, clutching her pink stuffed rabbit, eyes wide with confusion. Karen's head jerked toward her. The gun followed. Time slowed. My blood turned to ice. Karen, stop! I shouted, stepping in front of my daughter. It's me you want, not her. But she didn't hear me or didn't care. Her face twisted. You think you can just walk away while I lose everything? Outside, faint sirens began to wail, distant but growing louder. She glanced toward the sound, panicked, then back at me. You called them, she spat. Of course you did. Always hiding behind someone else. Karen, I said carefully, keeping my voice level, my hands visible. Put the gun down. You don't have to do this. Her lips trembled. I had everything under control, she whispered, almost to herself. And then you ruined it. Karen, please. Tara's voice came from the stairs, soft, pleading. Don't do this. It's over. That broke something in her. She screamed, an animal sound, and raised the gun again. I lunged forward, grabbing Gina and pulling her down behind the couch. A deafening bang split the air. Drywall burst apart inches above my shoulder. The smell of gunpowder filled the room. Tara screamed. Another bang. The picture frame exploded beside me. Karen, stop! I roared. But she wasn't stopping. Outside, tires screeched. Doors slammed. Police! Drop the weapon! Voices shouted over the thunder. Red and blue lights flared through the rain, casting the scene in strobing chaos. Karen froze, caught between fight and surrender. The gun still trembled in her hands. Drop it now! An officer yelled. Her voice came out as a whisper. You ruined me. And then, she turned the gun toward the window, toward the flashing lights, like she couldn't decide who to hate more. Another shout. Another flash. Crack. She fell. The gun clattered across the hardwood, spinning once before stopping. For a long moment, the only sound was rain against glass, soft, relentless, cleansing. I didn't move. My ears rang. My chest felt like stone. Then Tara's hand was on my shoulder. She's down, she whispered, voice trembling. It's over. But I couldn't look at Karen. Not yet. I turned to Gina, still crouched behind the couch, eyes wide, tears streaking her cheeks. I scooped her up, holding her tight against my chest. She buried her face into my neck, shaking. It's okay, baby, I whispered, my voice cracking. You're safe. Daddy's got you. Police flooded the room, securing the weapon, shouting commands. A paramedic knelt beside Karen, checking her pulse. I caught a glimpse. She was alive. Barely. They took her away in handcuffs, soaked, pale, silent. When the sirens faded and the flashing lights vanished from our driveway, the house felt hollow, like the air itself had been emptied out. Tara sat beside me on the couch, wrapping a blanket around Gina. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, she whispered, I kept thinking, what if we hadn't exposed her? What if we'd stayed quiet? I looked toward the shattered picture frame on the wall, our family photo, splintered but still clinging to the nail. Then she'd still be out there, I said quietly. And one day, this would have happened to someone else. We sat there until dawn. The rain stopped. The sun rose pale and uncertain. The neighborhood woke to news alerts and flashing headlines. HOA president arrested for fraud and armed assault. She'd live. She'd face trial. And for the first time in a long time, Hollow Ridge would finally be free. As the morning light spilled across the living room floor, I watched Gina sleeping on Tara's lap, peaceful again. I brushed a lock of hair from her forehead and whispered to myself, rules are rules, huh, Karen? Then I smiled faintly. Turns out, so is prison. Morning came slow that day. The storm had passed, but the neighborhood looked bruised. Puddles reflecting broken clouds. Crime scene tape fluttering across our porch. A faint metallic smell still hanging in the air. For the first time in months, Hollow Ridge was quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet. The kind of silence that comes after everything explodes. Karen's arrest spread through the community faster than lightning. By noon, news vans crowded the entrance gates. The HOA email thread, once used to complain about mailbox paint and lawn lengths, was now a battlefield of outrage and relief. Some residents couldn't believe it. Others said they'd always known something was wrong. I didn't read the comments. I didn't need to. I'd lived it. The police took our statements until late morning. They collected the camera footage, the recording, every shred of evidence Tara and I had gathered over months of fear and patience. The detective, a steady, tired man with coffee breath and kind eyes, shook my hand before leaving. "You did good," he said quietly. "Most people would have given up long before this." When the last cruiser pulled away, Tara and I stood on the porch together. The air felt lighter somehow, like the house itself was exhaling. She looked at me with a faint, weary smile. "It's really over, isn't it?" "Almost," I said. "The law still has to catch up." And it did, slowly but relentlessly. Over the next few weeks, investigators uncovered everything we'd already suspected, and more. Fake invoices, missing HOA funds, bank transfers to her cousin's company, threats sent to multiple residents. The DA's office filed charges: fraud, forgery, embezzlement, and aggravated assault. Karen's bail was denied. The judge called her a flight risk with a pattern of intimidation. Watching the footage on the local news, her in handcuffs, head down, no makeup, no pearls, felt surreal. She looked nothing like the immaculate president who'd once ruled over us with fake grace and iron rules. Arthur testified first, then a half-dozen neighbors. Tara too. Each voice chipped away at the mask she'd worn for years. When it was my turn to take the stand, I didn't feel triumph, just a strange, heavy calm. I told the court about the fines, the threats, the night she came to our house with a gun. I spoke plainly, no anger, no exaggeration. Just the truth. The same truth she'd tried to bury under fear. Karen's lawyer tried to paint her as emotionally unstable, under stress from harassment. But the evidence was too overwhelming. The recordings, the checks, the fraud trail, it was all there. And the video from our porch camera? That sealed it. The jury didn't take long. Guilty. When the verdict was read, she didn't cry. She just sat there, still, hollow, broken. For a second, I thought I saw something human flicker in her eyes. Regret, maybe. But then she looked away. The judge sentenced her to 8 years in state prison. She'd served time for fraud and assault, and she'd never be allowed to hold a position in any community association again. It wasn't revenge that I felt. It was released. The kind that seeps through your bones, replacing months of fear with quiet peace. After the sentencing, Tara and I walked out of the courthouse hand in hand. The reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward. How does it feel knowing justice was served? I paused, looked straight ahead, and said the only thing that felt true. It feels like we can finally go home. And home we went. Over the next few months, Hollow Ridge slowly came back to life. The new HOA board, led by Arthur, voted to repeal most of Karen's ridiculous rules. Neighbors started talking again. Kids played basketball in driveways. Front porches were full of laughter instead of paranoia. Someone planted flowers in front of the clubhouse. Bright, colorful, defiant. The same kind Karen once fined people for. One Saturday morning, I was washing my car when Mr. Wilkins from down the street walked over with 2 mugs of coffee. He smiled, shaking his head. "You know," he said, "this place used to be a prison with picket fences. Now it feels like a neighborhood again." I smiled back. "Guess we all did a little time, huh?" He laughed, nodding. "Maybe so." That evening, as the sun dipped low, Tara and I sat on the porch watching Gina draw with chalk again. Big hearts, stick figures, her signature rainbow. She'd stopped having nightmares. Stopped asking if the mean lady would come back. Kids have a way of healing faster than adults. Tara leaned against my shoulder. "You ever think about what would have happened if we hadn't fought back?" "Every day," I said quietly. "But I'm glad we did." She smiled. "Me too." A warm breeze rustled the wind chimes Karen once complained about. For the first time, that sound didn't carry tension, just calm. Across the street, the house that once belonged to her sat empty. For sale sign out front. The paint peeling, the lawn overgrown. A monument to what happens when power turns into poison. Before going inside, I looked around at the neighborhood. Clean sidewalks, kids riding bikes, the hum of barbecues starting up for dinner. Life had returned. Real life. Later that night, after tucking Gina in, I stood in the doorway of her room, watching her sleep. The soft rhythm of her breathing filled the silence, and I whispered a small promise to myself. Never again. Never again would we let fear run this house. Never again would we let someone's power threaten what we built. As I turned off the light, I caught my reflection in the window. Tired eyes, a few new lines, but a peace I hadn't felt in years. Downstairs, I poured myself a cup of coffee and stepped onto the porch one last time. The air was cool, the sky clear, stars sharp and bright above Hollow Ridge. I thought about Karen's favorite phrase, the one she used every time she sent a fine, every time she justified cruelty behind her clipboard and smiled. Rules are rules. I took a slow sip, the corner of my mouth curling into a small, quiet smile. Yeah, I whispered to the night. And so is prison. Then I turned off the porch light, finally, peacefully, and went inside.